I am Ty Roulston, the curator of the State Arboretum of Virginia, and I am here to talk to you about some of my favorite trees in the Arboretum. But I thought rather than just go and point out a couple of individual stoic trees that are out here on the grounds, I thought I would actually show them to you in our community forest, which most people don't know about, most people haven't explored, and it's got some really wonderful trees in it. So I am right now standing at the edge of part of our community forest. Now the community forest is called a community forest because it was planted by various groups from our community, including school groups, K through 12, mostly K through 6 even. There were master naturalists and other civic groups, all came out here and helped put the trees in the ground. And the reason we planted these trees is to actually create a forest out here that will connect part of the Arboretum with the existing forest out by our main road. And so this project has the potential for you to see more forest here at the Arboretum, but also to see some really nice trees, and among them some of my favorites. If you're wondering where our community forest is and how come you've never seen it before, well, you've passed kind of right through the middle of it. As you come in our front entrance, just as you come in the entrance, you go through a little patch of forest, and right after there, both on the left side and then a little further to the right side, you'll find that community forest right there. And you just wander up, you'll see the trees, you'll see the tags, and you'll see the deer cages. All right. So the first tree that I want to talk to you about, I'm standing right beside here, and this is the sassafras. This is one of my favorite trees in the world, and most people who see it and know it also have a special feeling about it. And it just looks different when you see it. So we have, the first thing you notice is that there are 3 different kinds of leaves on sassafras trees. So there is the sort of the 3-toed leaf here, like that. And then there are rather simple oval leaves like this. And then if you look hard enough on this particular one, you should be able to find one of the mitten leaves like this right here. So we've got oval leaves, mitten leaves, and these 3-toed leaves, and then different trees will have different proportions of those. So that's one thing that makes the tree kind of unusual. Another thing is really the odor. So it's got a really nice kind of an odor, and if you just kind of rub the leaf, you get a little bit of a sort of a faint kind of a root beery odor. The roots have a much stronger smell of that sort of root beer odor. And in fact, traditionally, both by Native Americans and then by rural people would make root beer and other tonics out of the roots. So that that is something that's no longer done, because it's been found that one of the components of the oils from sassafras has saffrole in it, which has been shown to be carcinogenic. So that is, we no longer recommend that you go out and do that, but you can find, we can find sassafras oil where the saffrole has been taken out, so that you can still use it. But you can still get some of that odor from the bark or from the leaves. This makes a great tree for the yard. It gets to be anywhere from 30 to 50 feet tall. Fantastic autumn foliage. So it gets these sort of bright goldeny yellow to red to purple leaves. It's a little bit slow growing. So this tree here, like all the ones around me, was planted in 2011. So this tree is going on 9 years old, and it's only just barely gotten taller than I am here, and I am sort of a typical height. So that's one nice thing to have, reason to have it here at your house, is that it won't overwhelm the yard. Still has all the fall color and all the interesting leaves that you can see. So this tree we did name this year as the tree of the year for the State Arboretum. So it is a widespread tree of the eastern forest, anywhere from the Mississippi all the way to across the United States and up into eastern part of the United States and up into Canada. So a wonderful tree to have here. A lot of nurseries do carry it, so you can get a sassafras, but see it here as one of the first things you will encounter as you come into our community forest. Now, without having to move too far, I want to show you one of the other trees here in the community forest. And the first thing that you'll notice is that as I move over underneath it is that it's a heck of a lot bigger than that sassafras. So this is a tulip poplar, one of, if probably the biggest tree of the eastern forest. So this also was planted in 2011, and you can see that it gets, I'm not sure how tall to estimate that, was 30 feet or something, or up there. Very, very fast and straight growing tree. And one of the things that tulip poplars are known for, first also, is the leaf. It's a very, very unusual leaf, kind of tulip petal-like shape to it. Always to me looks like somebody's come across with some kind of pinking shears and cut all the ends of the leaves off. And so a very unusual look to it. So you have to have a pretty big skyline by your house to put a tulip poplar over there. But one of the things that you'll appreciate, if you do, it'll get shade very, very quickly. But also when it produces flowers, and we don't have any flowers on this one, they're nice orange and yellow and green flowers that the bees love. So one of the best known honeys from the eastern United States is tulip poplar honey. Get a very, very nice honey from the tulip poplar here. So now I'm going to leave this tulip poplar right here and pass through our community forest. So we've got some red bud right over here. Then we've got another sassafras right in front of me. And I'm going to stop right here at one of the other interesting trees from the Blandy collection here. So this, which has these 5-pointed leaves that a lot of people think must be some kind of a maple, this is actually sweet gum. So sweet gum, another eastern U.S. tree, has these very, very distinctive 5-pointed leaf lobes like that. It's called sweet gum because there's actually the sap that comes out of wounds in the trunk was chewed by Native Americans as a kind of gum. It actually was used that way. This is absolutely my favorite tree for the foliage in the fall. So it'll go from green to yellow to gold with into deepening orange and red, and it can have all of those colors on individual leaves as it goes through that progression. We have a very large tree by the parking lot that is always my favorite one to see every year. Very unusual bark. It has these raised ridges like this, very corky bark with these raised ridges. The one thing that people don't like about it, so you have to think about whether or not planting it in your yard, it has these little the fruit come in these little balls that kind of pile up below the tree, and that some people don't mind, some people can't stand it. So you have to think about it. So this tree is also planted in 2011. So it's sort of a medium grower, much faster than the sassafras. Nothing competes with the tulip poplar, so there's not going to be anything in that league. But this is another nice tree, fantastic one for fall foliage. If I was going to plant one tree just for that in a giant grove to see in the fall, this is what I would do. I think it would compete with the ginkgos, but I'm sure a lot of people are going to try to shout me down over that one. All right. So here's another one of my favorites in the community forest and in the forest around here. So this is a black cherry. So one of the key ways to recognize the black cherry are all these long sort of flowers, the inflorescences coming off. A lot of butterflies and bees will go up to the inflorescences. So this is a great pollinator plant. Also very, very quick growing tree. So this is, again, 2011 planting. So we're at, what, 15 to 20 feet high in that period of time. So another quick growing tree of the forest. Also nice one to have around the yard. And then right next to me over here, we have American hazelnut right here. So if you're just looking for something a little lower down, we've got it's kind of a small tree, more like a shrub that has these very distinctive sort of leaves, very sort of rough leaves, and it does produce fruit. It produces these very, very wonderful hazelnut fruits that you can harvest and eat. A little bit of work to get them out, but a nice one to have at home as well. Now, one thing I want to talk about here in the community forest is just how we are transitioning this land into forest. So as you can see by the the ground around me, this was all grass. So this was pasture grass, pasture fescue, and we want to convert this into forest. And one of the ways that people think about grassland becoming forest or pasture becoming forest is just letting it go and then it will become forest. Unfortunately, with fescue, you let it go and it basically stays fescue for a really long time. So all the rest of this land around me has been in pasture without anything grazing on it for decades. So you need to find a way to let it transition. Now, if we were to come and plow it up or to kill off the fescue, then there would be all sorts of weeds and invasive shrubs taking over in here. So rather than lose the fescue without controlling what happens after it, we've decided to plant the trees right in the middle of the grass. So we make the trees little islands within the grass, and then as the tree canopy starts to grow together, then the trees are already doing really, really well, so we know they're going to survive. And as they grow together, then they start to shade out the grass. And so that's how we transition to having the canopy part of the forest already in place. And then we can add more of the shrub layers, and then things will start to come in on their own as we get more birds perching in the trees and bringing fruits in that then seed the understory. So our process is just a slow transition from grass into the forest without going through the horrible weed stage that you would get otherwise. We still have to protect our trees from deer. So these are all deer cages that you see here. We have a large deer population, and they would go for the trees when we first plant them. So we have to get them big enough that they can take the deer. And then we have to keep them from getting choked out by the weeds that do get on the inside of the cages. And then we will do a few mowings out here just to keep the grass from getting too competitive with the trees as they're getting established. But that amount of care goes down very, very quickly. And you can see how dominant the trees have become here. But if you look around, you still see that this is grassland with trees in it, not yet a forest. So it's a very important intermediate stage before we get to that forest. In total, we have planted about 350 trees here with our community groups that will become this community forest. And all of our trees here are tagged with when they got planted and what kind they are. So they all have these little tags up here that just numbers and Latin names, but some of them also have a much friendlier tag down here that shows that this is the eastern black oak, Quercus velutina, and tells you something about where it's from. But it also lists the group from the community that helped plant it. So this one says, in appreciation of the Flint Hill School for help planting our community forest, and we have many other tags for all the different groups that have come out here. So hopefully some of the people who got their hands dirty putting these trees in the ground, hopefully they will come out and some of them may still look down and see they're bigger than that tree, but if they planted one of the tulip poplars, I think they're looking up. So we've just transitioned to the west side now of our entrance over to the other side of our community forest. And as you'll see around, that this is a little bit older, so these trees were planted really only about 1 year earlier than all the trees on the other side, but they're also planted denser, and many of these are bigger trees. So we've got the tulip poplar here, we've got a bur oak behind me, some more red maples around that are filling this in. So it's starting to have a bit more of a forest feel over here. If you look down on the ground, you'll see that now we don't see the grass anymore, but we've mulched over here. And that's because the trees have finally started to shade out the grass, and we didn't want just a random assortment of things coming up from the ground just yet. And so we've mulched to try to keep the weed problem down while the trees get bigger and bigger and even more shadier over here. So one tree that I really want to talk about over here is the pawpaw. And it's a small tree, almost bush-like. You can see right here. So this is planted in 2010, and it's gotten to be about, looks like 15 feet high right here. It was planted just as a single seed. So it's actually grown fairly quickly, because everything else was planted as 2 or 3 foot saplings, but this was planted as a seed in the ground, just protected in the fall, and then it came up when it was ready to come up in the spring. If you've ever tried to start pawpaws from seed, you'll find that's a little bit problematic, because they don't germinate really well, and then they just grow down for a long time before you even know that anything is happening. And so by the time you figured out that it's actually growing, you didn't water it enough and it already died because it had been growing for a while. So just letting it start out here on its own is pretty helpful. So the pawpaw is a really nice plant to talk about. So this is throughout the eastern United States, most commonly known from riverbanks. So if you are canoeing down the Shenandoah River or the Cacapon or the Potomac, then you are very likely to see as a dominant small tree or shrub on the riverbank the pawpaw. And what pawpaws are known most for is their fruit. So their fruit matures in September, and it can be a little bit smaller to about the size of a good sized mango. And it is, for me and for probably half of the people that try them, fabulous. Just a wonderful combination of mango and banana flavor. Smaller seeds than mango, but just a delicious flavor. For the other half, it's a kind of a slimy thing they don't really like, but we'll leave those people aside and just say this is one of the wonderful trees of our forest. So it has the biggest edible fruit from any of the trees in the eastern United States, and it was so highly prized that in 1916 there was a competition for people to submit the best tasting fruits of the pawpaw for a national competition, because people wanted to start propagating it for commercial use, to be a new orchard crop in the United States. And so the best mangoes from all over the US were contributed to one source and were judged, and then the seeds from these trees went out to try to get a new crop going. And these efforts went up through the 1930s. They were putting out orchards all over the United States, and then it just kind of fell off. And I think the biggest hurdle was that they never could figure out really how to store them long enough to be commercially viable. But the flavors were always there and always of great interest. And of the places that planted these orchards and were involved in this research, Blandy Experimental Farm, here which hosts the State Arboretum of Virginia, was one of those sites. Now, pretty much the pawpaw fell off of everybody's radar, aside from those people that spent part of their summers along rivers and would find them in the fall. It fell off everybody's radar until the 1970s, when a person at West Virginia University named Neil Peterson got very interested in pawpaw, and he really liked them, and he thought, well, why, what happened? This is such a wonderful fruit. And he found out all about these old competitions and how it had just sort of disappeared from everybody thinking about it. And he started a resurgence of interest. So he went out to places that were listed as having these wonderful varieties of pawpaw, including Blandy right here, collected seeds, and he started doing his own breeding program. And still hasn't solved the problem of storage, but he's gotten a lot of people interested in trying to grow their own pawpaw orchards, and a lot of people are planting them on their land and enjoying them out in the wild. So it's pretty easy to get them going. If you start with the seeds, pretty easy to like them for at least half the people in September, and you can get them going just like you see here. So this is just one tree. They will sprout out from the base and make a little patch, and you need more than one if you're going to get fruit. So they do not pollinate themselves, so they need insects to move back and forth between the flowers. So it's too early to see the fruits, but it's not too early to see the flowers. So we're at the tail end of flowering here. This is very unusually colored, sort of a kind of a purpley red, sort of brownish red colored flower here. They are not pollinated by bees. Bees just ignore them. They are pollinated by small flies and beetles. and they often are under-pollinated, so frequently they don't produce very many fruit because they don't get pollinated all that much. People sometimes do it by hand between different plants to get better pollination. And some people have tried things like putting out hanging meat or cadavers, putting cadavers in the area to attract flies and beetles, putting out manure. I don't know if any of that works, but that's just one of the things that people have tried to do to get better pollination in the pawpaw. So plant a few pawpaws, get a nice pawpaw patch, and hopefully you will be one of the people that really loves the pawpaw. Thank you for joining me on our tour of the community forest and my favorite trees in the Arboretum, and I will take any questions that you have.